Yep, they're hiring. Come join the team, baby. Let's talk about it. So if everyone's hiring right now, doesn't matter if you're part-time, full-time, you're IBM, or you're the taco shop. Everybody wants good people. How do we find them? How do we keep them? So this is part 2 in our 5-part series about how to hire more effectively and retain those folks in your organization. Want to find out more? Stick around and watch the rest of this video. Welcome to the Rapport Advantage Podcast. I am Alex Swire-Clark, human behavior expert, author, and award-winning speaker. Understand yourself and others to unlock your potential. Coming to you on this YouTube channel, which if you have not subscribed yet, why not? Always providing you with great personal and professional tips to help improve your life. In today's episode, we are talking about emotional intelligence and how it relates to hiring. So we've got a 5-part series on how to hire more effectively and what you need to do to retain your employees long-term so that they can work with you as long as you're in business, and what is helpful for them in terms of keeping them happy on the long term. So step 2 today, if you want to see step 1, I'll put a description in a link below to go back to and start with step 1, which is talking about core values and how we apply those. The second thing that we want to make sure that we have is a solid benchmarking foundation. So tip number 2, solid job benchmarking. What is job benchmarking? Well, some people call it job matching. It's matching a person to a role based upon their emotional quotient. EQ. We use EI and EQ sometimes, in terms of being synonymous, but in this particular case, we want to put the person in a role where they're going to be getting energy versus losing energy in a role. So if you've ever seen one of my workshops, I have a wonderful disc wheel where we talk about, if I've got a DI up here and I've got an SC down here and I've got different people all over the place, certain roles are going to matter to them in terms of what they're going to get out of a job and how much they're going to have to emotionally adapt. So for example, if I've got a DI who's up in the very top corner up here, and that's going to be someone who's very driven, very outgoing, all that kind of good stuff, and I'm trying to put them in a role where, let's say it's inside sales, where they have to make a phone call every week. They might not necessarily get a sale out of that, but they just want to ask about their other person's family on the phone. Just make sure that we're keeping some humanity in that conversation. Just continue to build those relationships. How in the world do we go about doing that for a high D when they're in a situation where they're having to be more of a monitoring than they are in terms of developing and getting business, making transactions, getting a commission, that kind of thing. So for the high Ds of the world, the high DIs, that's not necessarily going to be something that they're going to want to do every day. They want quick turnaround. They want fast transactions. They want to make it about the sale, not about necessarily the relationship. Not that they don't care about those other people, but they're there to get the sale and get those things done. So in that situation, we have an issue because we're going from someone who's way up here to having to behave in mannerisms that are way down here. And so they're constantly moving across the graph, constantly draining themselves of energy, not wanting to do what they're doing because they're not filled by it, they're not passionate about it. Versus if I've got somebody who's up here in this upper corner and the ideal candidate is going to be fulfilled by that role, lives right here, look at the distance between here and here. Not very much versus here and all the way down there, right? That makes a difference. So before we start doing our job benchmarking, we've got to get into job descriptions. So if you're a CEO, if you're an HR person watching this video, raise your hand if you have a clearly well-defined written job description for every single role in your organization. Yep, no. Most of you, I guess the answer is going to be no. When I talk to my CEOs across the country and in Canada and everywhere else, when I ask them that same question, normally I get less than 20% of the hands up, unless they are a very regimented, more of a procedural-based organization. Think engineers or accountants. Those folks typically have all of those things down. But for most of us, we don't have it, right? So that's number 1 in terms of your tip for today. Number 2 tip is to make sure that we have a job description and we use our job benchmarking to get those things done. We got to have a written job description for every person in our organization, every role in our organization. So if you don't have that, once this video is done, stop, get that written down somewhere. That's going to help you decide, okay, when I'm looking to hire the next Sally or Bill for this, whatever, plant processing person or customer service agent or salesperson or manufacturing consultant or whatever it happens to be, when you're hiring for that role, without that job description, we're just kind of, well, what are they doing? Well, some days they might be doing this and some days they might be doing this and then they're over here doing this. Well, how's that helping your candidate when they're trying to make a decision about your role? And how's this helping your manager when they're having to evaluate that person, that role? It's going to be clear as mud, right? Not going to happen. So we don't want that. So give me a good, solid, written, clearly defined job description for every role in your company so that when you're looking to hire more people in that role, or if you're creating that role from scratch, write that well-defined, clearly written job description. You'll have something to kind of be the anchor about what we're looking for in that role. So that's number one. Second step of number two is to make sure we've got that job benchmarking going on. In my organization, we call it job matching, trying to match the right person to the right role. Jim Collins said so many times in his book, Good to Great, it's not just a matter of getting the right people on the bus. It's about getting them in the right seats on the bus. Jim Collins, Good to Great. Get people in the right seats on the bus. So again, I could have a rock star winner who might be a high C, very process oriented, going to take their time, every detail, nothing's going to get missed, very competent, love that. But you put them in a high I role and they're going to struggle, they're going to fail, they're going to be done in 3 weeks. And so you're going to have to go through the churn of rehiring again and more training and wasted money, wasted time, wasted effort and energy. Nobody wants that, right? So people that have tools all there, that are out there all the time right now. There's Colby, there's Predictive Index, there's Culture Index. You can use DISC, there's Strengths Finders, all kind of great tools. I don't care. Use a tool. Use a tool. I tell my people all that. I don't care what tool you use. Some people like Colby really well. That's fine. Enneagram, okay, whatever. Strengths, that's great. Whatever your tool is, use a tool. In my organization, we start with DISC because it's super easy for me to teach. It's super easy for me to incorporate with everyone across our organization in terms of helping them to communicate. So we start there. But whatever tool you have, use that. So once we get that, right? Once we get that tool, then we have to figure out where we're going to put it in the process of our hiring. I will cover that in another tip later on down the line in terms of this new hiring process. But find a tool that works for you. As long as it's going to be something that's going to help you predict how people are going to be triggered by a role, how people are going to be communicating either effectively or not in a role, or things that are going to cause conflict in your organization, use the tool that's going to give you what you're looking for out of that hire. Again, for us, it's DISC. I know that because we have an entire company full of remote team members. Since 2006, we've been all remote. How do we hire effective people who can work remotely? Well, for me, I have to have task-oriented people. That's just where it starts. I've got to have people that are fulfilled by getting tasks done. Those folks, those high D's and those high C's are going to be more independently capable than my I's and my S's. D's and C's, intrinsically motivated. S's and I's, extrinsically motivated. I don't really have to spend a whole lot of time motivating, micromanaging my D's and my C's. They're going to get things done. They do it a little bit different way, but they're still going to get those things done. So my first thing I look for is I will take my tool and I walk through it. And the way that we do it, and the way that I recommend it to my CEOs, is to do it this way. Have the manager that is supervising that position and the highest performing person that's currently in that role sit down and do one of these assessments together. Because the manager is going to know, hey, here's what the ideal outcome I would like to see is. And that high performing person is like, look, I'm on the front lines. Let me tell you exactly what I'm doing, right? And does that match the job description that we have written for that role? So again, we write our job description, and then we have a person that's high performing in that job description already in that role saying, look, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. You've got me down for A, Y, and Z. So X and A are not the same thing. We need to make sure we are getting on the same page in terms of what I'm supposed to be doing and what you think I'm supposed to be doing and what I'm actually doing, right? So once those two people are sitting down and they're going through one of these assessments together, then we have that ideal outcome in terms of what's the ultimate panacea versus what's actually going on. And somewhere in the middle is the truth of what that role it should be doing and is capable of doing. So once we do that, then we have a place on our wheel, so to speak, and we'll see the intensity of those traits. We will see the where they place in terms of, are they kind of like a Swiss Army knife? Are they really close to the center where they're very emotionally intelligent creatures and they can kind of ping pong back and forth between those quadrants and not have to really adapt a whole lot, versus someone who's on the edge of the abyss, who's really intense and very easy to get into that mode, but struggle to get into maybe other modes, like a high C struggling to get into an I role, or a high S struggling to get into a D role. And so that will allow us to coach our people better. That will allow us to understand them before they're even hired, to determine, hey, is this person going to need a lot of coaching in this role? Or are they going to be pretty much, as we say in the South here, a pig in slop, right? Very, very happy. Just really, oh my gosh, you created this role for me, Alex. This is fantastic, right? Oh, I mean, they're just like, they never want to leave you. And so that's why our retention rates are so high at our companies, because we've done this job benchmarking before. We've matched people to roles before they're even hired, so that this is one data point that's objective, right? Hiring is subjective. It's super difficult to find ways to objectively measure things because people can fib on a resume, and some people are better at interviews than others, right? And people can just wow and go, oh my gosh, they're great. And then they have the skills of a peanut. We're going to cover skills in our next video. But in this particular way, whenever you use 1, 2, 3, 4 tools, you're getting more and more objective data points. Now, the key, what you want to remember here is, and always consult with your labor attorney, but you want to make sure that whatever tool you use does not cause a disparate impact. Let me repeat that. Make sure the tool you use does not cause a disparate impact, meaning it doesn't discriminate against one body of people, either by race, by ethnicity, by sexuality, whatever that happens to be. You don't want to have a tool that has that happen to you, because then you can get into discrimination suits and that kind of thing. So the DISC profile that I use has always been regarded as being not creating a disparate impact. So that's the tool that we use. Again, check your local labor attorney for whatever state you're watching this video in to make sure that you're following those guidelines. But in our situation, it does not. So we feel good about using that tool. So in that case, I will do that in terms of the second step of my process, which is actually the first, because we talked about core values in the last one. Then the second part, we're making sure that we are matching the candidate to a role that's going to fulfill them. We want people gaining energy from their role every day as opposed to losing energy, because that's when you have that losing energy mentality, becomes a toxic workplace, very gossipy, very backbiting, a lot of passive aggressive stuff because people aren't being fulfilled. But if you create roles and people, let's say that my candidate's here, like where this part of the window is, and the role's right here, my gosh, they're going to be fulfilled emotionally every single day. They're going to be passionate about it. They're going to be telling other people they need to come work there. They're just going to be very, very, really in touch with what you're trying to do from a culture, mission, vision, and value standpoint. It will all line up for you. Without that, it's going to take a lot of coaching to go through, and people are going to kind of beating their head against the wall all the time because they're not getting fulfilled by that role every day. Can they stay for a long time? Yes, but the odds are against it, because you're not providing that pathway to them being fulfilled, because not everyone's driven by money. Not everyone's driven by climbing the ladder. Not everyone's driven by, making sure all the numbers are right. Everyone's driven by different things. And once we're in touch with that and you use a tool, like my tool tells you what people are motivated by. So we can tap into that from a coaching and a managing standpoint. In summary,